Good morning, Louise.
Good morning, dear Walt. Yeah, it's a beautiful morning, and after quite a hectic week with weather, we've asked Ebbe Rabie to join us again today from Price Forbes. Last week we were chewing the breeze with him a little bit about insurance and what if and what about weather and so on. And then the huge storm happened, and so he's had a hectic time. So welcome, Ebbe. Please tell us more.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Deval. Thanks, Louise. I think how life can change in a week is phenomenal.
Indeed.
You know, we were sharing images of what can happen, what's potentially going to happen last week, and then the inevitable obviously happened. And little did we know the impact of the flood and the unseasonal rain. It's just something which is beyond the norm. I looked at some of the records for September, and I think we've doubled the previous records in terms of rainfall for September in many of these regions. It's just obviously just too much to cope for the road infrastructure. We had, people coming from the Feyboom area to talk about their problems and how, we've had lack of response from government, and in isolated areas are just being neglected. So we really need to get the message out there for government and the people who are in disaster management to assist the farmers and the communities, because livelihoods are at stake now. It's not, we're not just talking about the isolated farmer too. We're talking about regions that have been really badly affected. That to me is the most important thing. And, a lot of property has been damaged. A lot of uninsured property has been damaged. So, there are various triggers with insurance, and not everything's covered. So we'll have lots of upset people as well in the market who will suddenly be scrambling at the insurance policies and saying, well, why is this not covered? Why is that not covered? I mean, we've had lots of those responses already. And yeah, insurance is there to give you that fallback position if this does happen, but you haven't got the cover because of, you can't put a bridge or a road infrastructure onto an insurance policy. Those are the uninsurables. And, how do we protect that? I mean, if you have to insure every road on your farm and every bit of infrastructure, you will bankrupt yourself with insurance. And that's not the intention. I mean, you want to cover your business. And if that starts failing, those are the challenge we face with Louise.
Yes, and so I would imagine that there have been some massive claims coming your way to your company and to other insurance companies after all of this.
Yeah, look, obviously, yeah, carry on.
So sorry, but from what you've heard is through the whole insurance industry, what is the extent of the total damage that we see? But not just agriculture, everywhere.
Everywhere. I don't have the number, but I can tell you now it will be in the hundreds of millions of rands damage. We have, if you look at places like Hebel Aarde, you look at places like Bredasdorp, all your low-lying regions, you're going to have lots of infrastructure damage. You'll have lots of domestic dwellings being flooded. So, the insurance market will start be sending out assessors now. So for them to quantify that will take at least a month or two to quantify the loss. But I can tell you now, it's in the hundreds of millions of rands damage. You just look at the uninsurable losses. You look at losses to blueberries that you can't insure for rain damage, where you have bursting of fruit. You have, the uninsurable events like your transport. You now have to go transport a lot further because the road's been cut off. Now you have to go via different routes, so you're doubling up on your transport costs. Those are the costs that you have to cover. You have to hire in generators to get power up and running. Your systems are down because your power lines are down. These are real losses which it's so difficult to quantify. It will take literally months and weeks. So it's easy to look at a building which has been demolished and it's insured for 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 million rand and it's gone. That's easy to quantify, but it's the uninsurable losses that are really concerning me. how will that affect our farmers and the communities downstream? I mean, we've come through some really bad years in the agri-industry, and to be hit by something like this now, it's just unseasonal, and some farmers can't cope with it.
Yeah. So, any comments about, looking down the road? Is there anything that people can do differently? Is there any advice you have? Any comments?
I think it's difficult. Obviously a farmer and any commercial business is a prudent business, and you normally try and manage your business as if you're not insured, right? So you try and make provision for good quality infrastructure, good quality, runoffs, your storm drains are clean, your gutters are clean, and all these things. But when you have a deluge of rain like this, of 2 or 3 or 400 millimeters of rain in 2 or 3 days, nobody can cope. And we've seen the impact of this worldwide. It is just astronomical. So to manage something like this, it's very difficult. You can't. It's a bit like having a tornado that's come through your place. How do you control that? So these are uncontrollable weather events, and this to me is clearly another sign of the strong El Nino that we have at the moment, and how it's affecting areas. Last year we had the massive flooding in Durban. And I said at the time, where the underwriters and insurers are saying, well, we're not going to be giving flood insurance in Durban because it's, the losses that they picked up were in the 30-40 billion rands worth of damages. And I said, well, why are you going to take flood damage away from Durban? Because that's a 1 in a 100-year event. It might hit another area. And that's exactly what has happened now. That was a La Nina year where Durban was affected. Now we're in an El Nino year. And obviously, microclimates are different. So now you have different areas of the country that are going to be affected. My concern is what's down the line. If you look at the industry, my concern is we can have an exceptionally hot year. Yesterday, it was 31 degrees in Cape Town, for instance. 5 days ago, it was 10, 12 degrees. So I do think we're going to have exceptionally hot summer. So my concern is for dry conditions, heat waves. It's that fluctuation which is so temporal and uncontrollable. That's what we need to be looking out for. And how do we manage our farming operation? How do we irrigate? How do we fertilize? And I need some wisdom from consultants out there to give farmers guidance.
Well, I know that there's quite a bit of irrigation products out there that can help with these kind of things, especially if we're talking about watering orchards and things like that. But a question from my side is, so how does this event, and like the event in Durban last year, affect insurance premiums going up? Obviously, as you said, it's an uncontrollable event. It's not like if you had 2 accidents with your car in the same year, they say, well, we're increasing your excess, for instance. Do you see anything happening like forward?
Well, if we look at the Durban event, so the Durban event was a culmination of 2 years, 3 years ago. In 2020, we had COVID, so that was a 20, 30 billion rand loss. Then we had the riots, which was a 32, 33 billion rand loss. Then we had the flooding in Durban. That was a 30 to 40 billion rand loss. So we've had 3 catastrophic seasons or years in a row now. So obviously it triggers the reinsurance market quite badly. So, and I said, I think last week, where in the past South Africa was categorized as a non-catastrophe country, we are now categorized as a non-catastrophe country, where we are at the mercy of weather-related events and other types of pandemics too. That is a concern. Insurance is a numbers game, right? So any insurer will pass those costs down the line to every single consumer out there. So, if they are affected, they will transfer. So we talk about hard markets. So it just makes the market so much harder. So where we were hoping to get premium reductions on assets and commercial policies, this will just delay the market. I mean, I just priced the risk now this morning and last night on a big silo operation in the Free State, for instance. One underwriter came on board and said, we'll do everything, but we are limiting our exposure to flood damage. Now you think of flood damage in the Free State on a high-lying area. So that's the kind of reaction you get from underwriters, where they start limiting the exposure to potential weather-related events. That's the impact.
Sure.
And if you can't get the cover, you're going to start having to take this on your own balance sheet and say, well, how do I protect my risk?
Yeah. Wow. Yes, so it's a very complicated and complex situation. And
I've got a question about that. So if you say that you might have to take it on your own risk, let's take, for instance, the floods, Hicks Valley, around Worcester, Robertson, all the way down into the Overberg. What mitigations can people put in place? So, like, let's say, okay, right, you've got a farm. Should they dig stormwater trenches around the property? Should they put in more stormwater drainage systems? Things like that people can preempt in case the next thing comes. So that, I'm not saying your company, but let's say whoever insures them come to me and says, "But why didn't you have this?" Is there things that people could possibly do?
Look, insurers normally aren't prescriptive for something like flood damage. I mean, I can show you now whether you are in a 50-year flood zone or a 100-year flood zone. So, those are the kinds of risks the insurers and the reinsurers are going to start looking at, to say that, sure, if you are in a 50-year flood zone, potentially down the line, insurers will say, well, I'll give you fire cover, but I won't give you flood cover. You take your Val de Vise, I mean, your Bosch and Mears, it's not called Bosch and Meer for no particular reason. It's in a low-lying region. It's I mean, those areas are next to the Berg River. Berg River comes down, and those areas are going to be flooded. We saw videos and pictures of luxury houses with, walls being chopped open because the Berg River comes down through your house. Those are the uncontrollables. But insurers aren't prescriptive, but they can deny you if you are building your properties in flood zones. That's the one concern. Make provision for that. Insurers will normally look at your risk, and the first thing they think about is fire, right? So make all provision that you're protecting your property against fire. Now we're suddenly not saying with fire, we're saying with flood. But again, we're talking about one-off events here, Louise and Deerwald. We're talking about a 100-year scenario. So will it happen again? 100-year flood.
No idea. How long is a piece of string?
We could be stuck in this El Nino for another year or two. I mean, I saw some weather information last night, which I shared with you guys and online.
Yes, thank you.
Which shows the El Nino seems to be tapering off maybe early next year. So it might be, be on a downward spiral, and hopefully we go into more normal season next year. And that's ultimately the wish that we all have. But a 100-year flood or a 200 or 500-year flood, guys, we can't control it. I mean, I think memory.
That's what I've spoken to people that is quite a bit more you guys senior, and they've never seen anything like this. And I'm pretty sure. I don't think anybody has seen anything like this.
I think the last big event we had like this was potentially the Laingsburg floods. Again, that was also a cut-off low. Laingsburg was hit with a massive flood. It hit the Montague, Laingsburg, Kierum region. I remember when I was a kid, the Nay River came down. I mean, there was more rain coming down there than the Orange River has in flood, for instance. Now, these are small tributaries and things that can happen. Eventually, the Kierum Dam was raised a couple of meters to make provision for maybe future losses.
They had to go and open the gates of the Kierum Dam right now. Otherwise, they were worried that the wall might break. The Nay River,
absolutely. The
Nay River is washed away. I was there 2 days ago. It is a sight to see.
I heard of one farmer in the Nay Valley who took his wife to go look at the river, and they were driving through the river, and then this wall of water just came down and washed them down the river. Luckily they survived. But sightseeing in events like this, take caution, and protect yourself.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think we are exposed.
Anna, is there anything else? Sorry. we are exposed?
No. I think we're exposed to elements, and I think we really, hopefully this is now come and gone, and we obviously have to do mocking operation. But I think my appeal goes out to everybody, anybody who has, access to people in disaster management or government to really assist the low-lying regions and the areas which are off the grid and off the main cosmopolitan areas. And these are obviously the ones that get the most attention, and those who shout the loudest get the most attention. And I really appeal to people out there to assist the regions like Vryburg, like May, like Worcester, like X Valley, even down in the Overberg, Greyton area, all of these areas.
Hermanus.
Hermanus
got no water.
Hermanus, yeah, that's a big concern.
Yeah.
Verliersdorp got electricity this morning, I believe. I saw on friends of ours WhatsApp status that the power went on in Verliersdorp.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
That's good.
that's
At
good
least
news.
it's good news.
That is good news.
Because we had some follow up on yesterday. I was waiting for some kind of feedback from Justin Mudge, but yes, it's good to know. Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Well, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And we'll probably chat to you again sometime. And good luck with dealing with all the claims that I'm sure that are coming your way. Best of luck, and thank you again.
I think maybe just the last word from my side. I mean,
yes,
I know we had rain, but I think what is very important for most regions and most people to know that we didn't have hail with this event. We were thinking that we might have a cold spell with hail coming. So hail would have been far more catastrophic to our early pears and our blossoming fruit out there. So thankfully, rain you can maybe somehow manage, and luckily it didn't destroy the crops. Some trees and orchards might have washed away, but it's not a catastrophe in terms of the crop for the coming year. I think we might even see some good quality crops. I've got some good estimates coming through. The crops are up. The citrus industry up north is looking really positive. Volumes up. The markets are very positive. Prices are looking good for the fruit. So that to me is a positive sign. So some green shoots out there.
Fantastic.
I remember as being young, traveling to Vredendal with my dad, seeing the Olifants River flood those table grape vineyards as you come into Vredendal year after year, and they are 100% fine. So I think in terms of the actual flooding going through orchards, unless the trees have literally been uprooted and washed down river, the vines and trees will be fine.
I think, thank goodness it was early in the season. I mean, if this happened, in December or January, and when the grapes are ripe, and we'll have immense more damage. You'd have bursting of fruit and all kinds of other quality-related issues. Thankfully, we don't have that. So some green shoots there.
Great stuff.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much
for joining us again.
Pleasure. Okay.
Have a good one.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. You quickly want to have a chat about the other things we found interesting in the news?
It is still here with us. Yeah. Are we still on? Yes. Well, I think something that is very interesting is that, again, in the spirit of we always think South Africa's got the worst problems, I see on Fresh Plaza, it says, serious problems affecting both volumes and quality of Peruvian table grapes. So they seem to be having major weather issues there that is like very, very hot weather, which is pushing productions very early, and they're struggling to cope with that. So it's always good. It's always good to see what's happening, to our competitors in other parts of the world. And
and they were having issues with blueberries as well. So
yes, there seems to be trouble with the weather in Peru, and on our world markets, Peru is one of South Africa's biggest competitors with both table grapes and blueberries. So different parts of the world are being affected by extreme weather conditions.
Yeah, and then if you look at another thing I found interesting in terms of on the wine industry side is that Australia wine glut leaves growers searching for new markets. Winemakers hope that India could one day replace the $1.2 billion Chinese market, but that demand would take decades to develop. Well, I had a brief read through this thing, and basically what it says is that Australia is sitting with tanks full of wine that they can't sell. They've had to leave grapes on the vine to just rot. There was no place in the vineyards. Here in South Africa, at the moment, we're sitting with a shortage. For everything that I hear is that there is not enough wine out there to supply the demand. So,
yeah, we're living in a crazy world. I think one of if they're talking about the markets, I know that the Australians were very, very big into the Chinese market, and as we have also gathered from economists, that the Chinese economy is not booming. It's underwhelming at the moment. Yeah. And one of the luxuries you're going to probably cut back on is wine. And so, probably the post-COVID problems are coming, are really being seen now. And, South Africa, we were very worried about what was going to happen with the wine industry. And as you say, there's a shortage of wine, whereas Australia is struggling with a surplus. So the world's a funny place. And, it's just also good to see. It's informative to see that these things are happening in various places.
So then Citrus Growers Association of South Africa, CGA, put out yesterday, I think it was on, because they said how many tons of fruit was exported last week. I know there was a lot of questions as to which markets that it went to. So they put out these pie charts yesterday on the different things. So if we look at lemons, most of them went to Europe, Middle East, a little bit to North America, UK. There is mandarins, Europe and UK, and Asia, Southeast Asia being still the biggest. Then North America, oranges, we see Europe mostly, and then Asia, Middle East. Then grapefruit, Europe and Southeast Asia were the biggest markets. Well, very interesting.
Yes, there's a lot of information there, and it's good to be able to see which markets our stuff is going to, and you can see most of South Africa's markets are in the Northern Hemisphere, and that is really because we are supplying the Northern Hemisphere in the counter season, in the time when it's winter there or it's summer here, the opposite to when they are producing these products. So the Southern Hemisphere supply is very important from that perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. I think that's it. I think we can call this a wrap for today.
Yes, and thanks very much to Ebbe for joining us and giving us a bit of an update. And on Monday, we are speaking to Taryn Wettergreen from SATI. She's going to be telling us about the upcoming ITGS symposium at the end of November, telling us about the background to the symposium and what we can expect from it and why it's very exciting for South Africa to be hosting this. So have a great weekend.
Yep. Chat soon.
Chat soon.
Oh, I've got something I just want to add to finish off with. There's been people that asked, why are we doing this, what we're doing? And I think it's just, we're not trying to blow our own horn or anything. It's just because it's interesting stuff. If we find it interesting, the rest of the industry would probably also find it interesting. So for those people that have watched, thank you. And we encourage people to come and follow this with us. We don't know where this is going to go, but it's fun.
Yes, follow it. And if you've got any suggestions, if you think that there's anything that specific that's important to talk about, and if you
want to come chat to us, if anybody wants to come chat to us,
we'd love to chat to you.
Right.
Have a good one.
Cheerio.
Bye.